are 12 steps of throwing, and this helps break it down because if you skip a step, your piece will end up not centered. So the first step is number one, cone clay to bat. So what you're doing is you're getting your ball of clay and you're creating a little slip with your finger first, and you want to find the center of your wheel, this little dot. Then we throw it down. If you miss the center, it makes your life a lot harder to actually get this centered. So I place this on top, and then I just push down, and then I rotate. This is called coning the clay. So my goal is to get this piece of clay to look like a cone. So pointy on the top, wide on the bottom. Whenever I talk about hand placement, we talk about midnight, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Those are the main areas. Sometimes your hands will fall between there. So this is like 7 or 2. So those are your normal hand positions. All right, next step, it says seal your edge. So you take the sponge, you spin the wheel, and then at 3 o'clock right here, we apply downwards pressure so that we can seal the clay to the bat. So you take your sponge, apply downwards pressure, and then that blends the clay so that no water can get underneath it. And then wheel speed, we don't go faster than half speed. So this is where your pedal is parallel to the ground. This is full speed. We never want to spin it this fast. Keep it at half speed. And then proper way to be on the wheel, elbow should always be anchored on your arms or your legs, and then you're leaning your body weight in. So it's not the best for your back, but that way you're stabilized. My next step is to push it down even more so this gets stuck to the bat. So I get my hands wet, I get my clay wet, so while the wheel's spinning, I squeeze just a little bit of water, and then I put my hands on it, so I'm creating slip. So I'm creating lubrication so that my hands can guide the clay where it wants to be. And my first step is to push it down. So I'm gonna make a C with my right hand, flat palm with my left. They interlock each other like this, so it looks like that. And then I push down with my left hand. That creates a flat surface. And then I bring my left hand out and open so it mirrors my right. And so what happens is it pushes it down, and then I make it back into that cone shape. And then any slip that's created, you can just drag it against your throw water. Okay, so once again, push down, drag your hand out, mirror your left or mirror your right, and then you get the cone.
You could also switch your hands and make a C with your left and push down with your right. It doesn't matter. They're interchangeable. You can use either or. And when you push, I'm making my palm create this little ledge, pushing down in the center and moving it out. The goal is to push it down and still have the cone shape, and pushing it down allows the clay to get stuck and not fly off. That was steps 1, 2, and 3, and all of those steps are getting your clay stuck to the bat in preparation for centering.
All right, the next step is cone up, cone down, and repeat. So centering. Centering is the hardest thing about throwing. Some students take a really long time to learn. Like me, it took me about a month of constantly throwing every day when I was in high school. Some students pick it up really quickly. So when you guys are jumping on the wheel, you're mostly just practicing centering. So coning up, we're trying to get the cone to rise up, and then we're gonna cone it down. So I'm just gonna go real speed. All right, so coning up, hand brace against here. Actually, I'm just gonna talk it through, or I'll just speed through it. So I'm applying downwards pressure. We're working our way up, getting the clay to rise. When we get to the top, we stop. Remove the excess clay at the base, and then we apply downwards pressure at a forward angle. So this is me centering real speed as if I was doing production. Okay. Now, when you guys do it, of course, it's not going to be that fast. You're going to break it down into steps.
We will place your hands between 6 and 9 and 12 to 3. These are the areas that you apply pressure. Then if I were to draw lines towards the center, this is where we're working the pressure. Your left hand will push and your right hand will pull.
So it looks something like this. So brace at the bottom, applying pressure here. As I do that, I'm creating an undercut here, and then I'm lifting that undercut up with my palm and my sponge. Then both hands will rise towards each other, and then they will meet at the top, and that's where my left palm will then cup the top and stay there for a few rotations and slowly release. So this is called coning up. Now what coning up does is it removes any wobbliness from the bottom, and the goal is to get it to the top where you can center it. The next step is coning down. This is the part that's a little difficult because if you push straight down, the clay will always become off. I do this technique called the karate chop, where you're bracing with your left, your thumb of your left hand is pointing up, you're interlocking it with your pinky, and you're using this side on your right hand to push across the center here. Okay. Now, if your left hand cannot touch the bottom, you're floating your left hand, and your left hand's pushing forward this way, and your right hand is pushing across down this way. So it looks something like this. So you can see the clay tilting, especially for the people on my right. And then you keep pushing down until the clay is centered. Now it's getting dry, so I'm going to release the pressure, add more water, and then repeat. So push and get the clay nice and centered.
You can also hold the sponge with water in your right hand and gently squeeze as you cone down, as you can then add water as you get lower, and this helps you to prevent having to stop midway in the process. So as I'm coning down a little more, I'm squeezing at the base of the clay with my left fingers, and that helps remove any excess wobbliness that may cause the clay to rise up slightly, and that if that happens, I then will need to push down any bits. And so I'm taking the sponge and I'm applying downwards pressure with both hands, and I'm slowly sliding it either to the left or the right to flatten this out. Now I don't want it to be pointy, and you want it flat when you dig your well. So I'm going to repeat that again and slowly slide it out to the left or the right until I have more or less a flat top.
Now digging your well, we're setting up the inside of our piece. So you take your thumbs, I put one thumb on top of another thumbnail, and I apply light downwards pressure to find the center. Once I dig a pilot hole, I add some water or slip, and I keep repeating. And you are using your thumbs to dig it deeper and wider. So I don't like having it stacked up like that. I like kind of turning my thumbs to create a 90-degree angle. And what happens is it goes deeper and wider. Now I'm throwing with my elbows not anchored to my legs because my back is not good because I've been throwing for so long. Whenever you guys throw, you have to keep your elbows anchored to your legs. Okay, so that is the good form. Okay, and then you keep digging until you reach about a ½ inch of clay underneath the surface. So right here is about a ½ inch, and now I'm ready to open.
Before you open, I recommend checking the depth. So you take your needle, stab it in the center, grab it, and pull it out. And the distance from the tip of the needle to the tip of your finger is how thick the clay is. And your goal is to get it to a ½ inch thick. Now, when you grab it, this is how you should have your hand, and the needle goes into your hand just like so. Grip it while holding the side of the needle and pull it out.
Now for opening the well, I like using my thumbs on the inside, pointer fingers on the outside, and I move my pointer fingers to my thumbs like this. So working at midnight. So nice and slow, stretches out.
As the clay stretches, you maintain that same pressure. Release when the clay gets sticky, add water, and continue pushing out at a nice gradual rate.
As it gets wider, I'm slowing down, and I'm stopping the opening once this wall is parallel with this wall. So I'm creating two parallel walls, and it looks more or less like a donut. Okay, clean up the inside, and now I need to adjust my floor.
To do that, you use your fingers, left hand or right hand, doesn't matter, and you're applying downwards pressure to flatten the entire floor. You're going to go back and forth until the floor is completely flat from wall to wall. And once it's flat, then you can go ahead and focus your pressure in the bottom corner where the floor meets the wall, right there. That's where we need to get a nice 90-degree angle to form. And my wall is pushed out a little bit. So with my right hand on the sponge, I'm just quickly pushing it into my inside hand to make a nice vertical wall. Now, if I were to cut this in half, this is what it should look like. A nice vertical wall and two 90-degree angles where the floor meets the wall. Now, if I were to redraw this, this is what it normally looks like. You have a wide U and you have all this clay at the bottom. So what we're doing is we're pushing all that clay out where I'm scribbling it away and drawing the arrows to get that 90-degree angle.
Now I'm ready to start my pulls. So for the pulls, this is the next hardest part about throwing. Pulling your clay wall vertically up so that it's centered and doesn't become wobbly. So once again, this is step number 10, pulling my walls. So the way the pulls work, your left hand is always on the inside, pushing at 3 o'clock, right here, 3 o'clock on the wheel. Your right hand's always on the outside, pushing in at 3 o'clock. So left hand pushes out, right hand pushes in. Both the clay flexes and compresses between, and then you lift your hands up. So if this was my clay wall here, your left hand pushes above, your right hand pushes below, and then it creates a little S between the clay, and then you end up pulling that S up.
Now here's another view of a cross-cut piece. Left hand pushes out, right hand pushes in, and both hands rise up like an elevator. One more time. Left hand inside, right hand outside, left hand push out, right hand push in, and both hands rise up.
So it looks something like this. Whenever I can, I try to brace my left hand with my right hand. So I usually get my left thumb, brace it between my right thumb. Left finger's on the inside, this is gonna push out. Right sponge on the outside, this is gonna push in. So it looks something like this. So I push out with my inside left hand. The clay is creating an undercut here, and then my outside hand is pushing in, and then both hands will rise up. Okay. As you rise, you release the pressure. When you get to the top, leave it there for a few seconds and release. Now I created a ridge here. I'm going to do a compression to remove that.
To do that, you have your left finger inside, left thumb outside, and your right pointer finger goes down like a parking gate. So it compresses the rim and it removes any clay that is not attached, and it rounds out the rim to make it entirely level. So it looks something like this. The clay will collect between your fingers, and then you just take it off and wipe it away. Now we're ready to start our second pull. So I push out, push in, and I pull up. As I rise, I release the pressure, and when I get to the top, I leave my fingers there for a few seconds, let the clay catch up, and I release. Compress the top, and I do it one more time. Push out, push in, and pull up. Release pressure as you rise. When you get to the top, leave it there for a few seconds. Now you can tell that my rim is not straight, it's wobbly. It's higher on one side, lower on the other. But because I can cut it later, I'm actually going to go ahead and move forward. Now this next step is optional, and this is something that I like doing with my pieces. So what I do is I use my pointer finger and I raise it up and down at uneven intervals to create a texture. Now, these are called throw lines. Normally, you see them in a spiral moving up, but I like doing it all wobbly. I think it looks a little more interesting than a smooth surface. Next step is to shape. So to shape, your left hand is on the inside and it pushes out towards 3 o'clock. I use my right hand to brace against my left palm, and I'm curling my left fingers, and I'm slowly pushing out to expand the clay. When I get to the rim, I leave it there for a few seconds and I release away. Now, normally you keep your right hand against the wall, but because I have this texture, my right hand is just there to kind of help in case I push out too far. Now, I prefer the rice paddle, and the reason for that is it has more surface area to cover. You can stretch it further, and I feel like there's less error because you're moving a whole piece versus a single point, which is your finger. So you push out, and then you slowly lift it up and let the clay expand. When you get to the top, leave it there for a few seconds and release. Now I'm going to go ahead and compress the bottom to make it round from wall to wall. So I bring it down and across, and then I rotate the paddle to make it match the corner of the piece, and I slowly lift it up. When I get to the rim, I leave it there for a few seconds, and then I release. The rice paddle is really good at getting a nice curved surface, wall to wall, so it looks like a half pipe. So you can see here, I'm angling the tool so that it can fit nicely into that curve, so the whole surface of the rice paddle can touch the clay. And I'm going to keep repeating this until I get the bowl the shape I want it to be. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the uneven top. So to do this, I use the needle and I have it between both my hands. The needle pivots between my left and my right hand, and I'm drawing a line on the outside, and I'm slowly pushing that line into my left pointer finger, which is supporting the inside wall, and then I lift up. Now there is another easier way to cut, and that's using some floss, but we'll do that in person. Now I want to round the rim because when I cut it, it created these sharp corners. So I'm using the chamois and I'm putting my left pointer finger inside, right pointer finger outside. I'm slowly compressing the rim and I'm not pushing down. I'm just pushing into the corners and I'm rounding that out so it's not pointy. Last few steps, clean up the bottom, make sure it's nice and flat, remove any excess water, and now prep it to get cut off with the wire. So I take my wooden knife and I'm going to cut a little groove into the base of the clay about 1/8 of an inch. And this allows the wire to cut into the clay between the clay and the bat. Now, if we don't make this groove, what happens is the wire can ride up onto that slope and cut higher. Now, when you grab the wire, you want to put the washers between your pinky and your ring finger on the outside, and your thumbs are going to be on top of the wire. You start cutting from away from you and you pull towards you. The first time you guys cut, I do recommend you keep the wheel not spinning. I spin it because it helps keep the piece nice and round. And then with the sponge, I'm just quickly smoothing out and absorbing any water, and then cleaning up all the slip from the plastic wheel. And then you pop it off, and then you go ahead and wrap it up with plastic. And here is another point of view with some more in-depth instructions.
So you take the wooden knife, cut into the base about 1/8 of an inch, remove any excess clay that comes off, and then you grab the wire. You place the washers between your pinky and your ring finger, and you ensure there's no slack between them. And when you're ready to cut, you cut on the midnight side, pushing down with your thumbs on the wire and dragging it towards your body while ensuring your thumbs do not lift up off the bat. You then take off the extra clay from the wire, make sure it doesn't swing and hit your piece, and that is it. Before you take your bat off the wheel, take a sponge and your water and remove any excess clay water, slip, anything from the bat so that when you cover it in a bag, it doesn't get dirty. To pop it off the wheel head, I take a metal scraper, place it underneath the board, and I pry it up. And then one last step is to wipe any clay water that's underneath the plastic bat.
And now a bowl thrown in 4 minutes. Put it down. First step, cone clay to bat. Next step, add water and seal the edge. This is combining steps. I'm pushing it down and sealing at the same time. And now I'm coning up and coning down at the same time. So I'm just compressing the clay to center. Now I'm digging my well. Get my depth. Now I'm going to go ahead and open my well and do a pull at the same time. So as you can see, I'm combining steps as I'm going to help speed the process. And here's my second pull. Push out, push in, pull up. When I get to the rim, keep it there for a few seconds, release. And remember, as you rise, you release the pressure. One more pull, push out, push in, pull up. Release pressure as you rise. When you get to the very top, leave it there for a few seconds and release away. I'm going to go ahead and straighten out the clay. So I'm using a wooden knife, and my inside left finger is pushing against my right hand that's holding the tool. That straightens out the wall. And I'm going to go ahead and put those wavy throw lines again. And before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and absorb the water and compress the bottom with the round side of the wooden knife. So not only am I compressing, I'm also making it nice and flat in the middle. And here I go with the wavy lines. Pointer finger on the outside and just raising it up and down in no rhyme or reason, just going up, down, and just going with the flow. Okay, I work my way to the top. I don't go all the way to the rim. I compress the rim though. It is a little wobbly, and I'm not worried because I'm going to cut that later. And then now with the rice paddle, I first push the rim out to expand it. This is going to be a bowl, so I get the top expanded out. Then I go to the bottom, and then I make it match that push out at the top. And then I keep repeating that. I push out the rim a little bit, and then I go down to the bottom. So I go to the bottom now, pushing out, and I'm slowly lifting the tool up. My right hand is at the rim to ensure that it doesn't get pushed out and become too wobbly. And I keep repeating this until I get the bowl the shape I want it to be. Now I'm turning it, making sure it's a nice curve, right hand there to support, having it meet at the top. And one more time to even it out. It looks super wobbly, really uneven at the top. But I'm not worried because I'll be able to cut all that off. So I'm just fine tuning it Putting the rice paddle down, and now I'm going to get my needle. I'm going to go ahead and cut that unevenness. And once I cut this off, it should more or less be centered and level. Grab my chamois, round the rim. Remember not to push down, but just to compress the corners. Get my wooden knife next. Create the little groove at the base, about 1/8 of an inch in. This allows a little groove for the wire to go in. Grab the wire and slide it towards me. There we go. A bow thrown in about 4 minutes.